your counselors. They're the eyes and ears. They know what sort of doesn't look right and what looks a little bit out of place. So keep that in the back of your mind. Hold on a second. Rebecca, I can't move this on. Technical difficulty in New York. There we go. Okay. This morning we had one of our security consultants come to HKC. We're doing a site assessment here, and basically he said to me and my staff, I just want to remind you security is expensive and it's inconvenient. And I want to let you know security is expensive and sometimes it can be inconvenient. Where am I coming from? I always used to say at the JCC Maccabi Games it was a gold medal summer. Well, I now say it at Henry Kaufman Campgrounds, it was a gold medal summer, especially when we bring home everybody safe and sound. I'm in the business of being helpful. I'm a little bit of a storyteller. My goal, or you're probably at some point you might have come to this webinar to say, well, you know, what am I going to learn from Lenny? Why does, you know, how's he going to be helpful to me? And I think that some of the things that I mentioned a little bit earlier, my former camp experiences, my understanding of through the security through the games, my 14 years at JCC Association, I understand your business. I understand the challenges that you have within your agencies. I understand the challenges that you usually have with your supervisors, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But most of the things I always like to talk about is common sense 101. Things for you to think about, things for you to discuss so that you can sleep a little bit better at night. I think that a lot of what I'm going to tell you is easily done. First takeaway. I'm going to assume that some of you have been to some different seminars or conferences or webinars, or maybe you've just Googled and found some research online, okay, about security. And one of the reasons why I got involved doing what I'm doing, I've spoken a couple of times now at ACA conferences. I spoke at the Foundation of Jewish Conferences, and this is my second webinar, is I said, it's not about me as the camp director. There's all this information, what you should do in a bomb threat or what you should do here, there, wherever. And at the end of the day, they weren't really talking to me. At the end of this presentation in our resources, there's going to be something that calls Keep Your Camp Safe. And I just read through it the other day. It's great. It's almost 70 pages, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of questions, checklists. It's amazing. But there's not one thing that I could find in this document that talked about me as the camp director, what I should be thinking about. Let me tell you a little bit about the Henry Kaufman Campgrounds. We have 3 facilities in the New York area, one in Long Island, one in Rockland County, one in Staten Island. In total, we have about 500 acres. We have 16 different agencies, 14 different camps, which you can see here on a daily basis. Take a breath. About 4,500 to 5,000 campers and staff each and every day. We're a very, very unique organization because we have multiple camps. Technically, while I hate to use this word, we're sort of the landlord because each of the camps comes to our facility. They run camp, we run the facilities. We run security, we run medical, we run swim, housekeeping, and maintenance. Each of the camps on our site has its own training policies, their own communication mechanisms. We're sort of like the conductor of the orchestra. We're making it all work. We're bringing people together, okay, to be able to move together, work together, play together. Each of the sites has their own site director. This is my go-to person. He deals then with the various camp directors of whatever the issues might be. As a facility, we're not ACA accredited because there's no space for us to sort of fit in, but many of our camps are ACA accredited. Now in your world, JCC day camp directors, you got a lot of stakeholders, your supervisor, your board of directors, the camp committee, vendors, staff families, staff, camper families, campers, the executive director. In your world, some of you report to a program director, some of you report to an assistant executive director, and some of you report directly to the executive. So again, there's certain things that are going to work for you. There's certain things that you're going to have to take up the food chain in order to be able to get the approval. One size does definitely not fit all. The question is, where do you fit in? Some of what I'm going to share will be important for you. Some of it, again, will be for your supervisors. One of the questions that I asked early on, and for those of you that responded about, is your camp on your JCC property? Is it in your building, or is it an off-site location? The interesting thing is about a third, okay, depending on, I guess, your different JCC. The second question I asked is, do you have a director of safety, security? And about half of you do, and half of you don't. As I started to read through some of the answers, some of you need to get on the same page if you're not already on with the director of your security, especially since so many of the directors of your security also have responsibilities in camp. And I would question how deeply they're involved and how much they know about what it is that you do at camp. A number of the areas of discussion that we're going to talk about today: preparation, procedures, building support, some equipment, some infrastructure. Now, I am not a security expert. I just know a bunch of different things over the years. And again, the key thing that I think where I can be most helpful to you is I've walked in your shoes. Another piece that I'll call Common Sense 101. I'm going to assume, for discussion's sake, that everybody has something, okay, called this code red flow chart, which you can see, okay, sort of gives an overview of who's responsible to who. As I mentioned, we're not ACA accredited. For those of you that are, I'm going to assume, okay, that you have something in your system, okay, that tells you, you know, the sort of who's going to call who and how you're, you know, in case of an emergency, that your flow of communication is going to work. The one thing that I've learned over the years, and the one thing that I've shared with a number of other camp professionals, is to practice. That you don't necessarily need to make the calls to the people that are on your chart, but you need to sort of go through the motions and see how long it takes for you to be able to get through point A to point B. Again, little things make big things happen. The other thing that we do, which I'm going to assume the majority of you do as well, is we have the system called Call One Now, where we can email and text message. We have a little over 1,000 people on our list. We have a lot of stakeholders. You know, if you just look at the chart for a moment, under my name, I have people in my organization. UJ Federation is our parent organization. FOJP is our insurance providers. We have agency representatives. And then my one colleague, Dave, he then calls site directors, our security companies, site receptionists. Rebecca, as you can see on the right, she does all the Call One Now lists. And this all needs to be synchronized and organized so it's very, very smooth in the God forbid situation. Speaking of situations, this is a key one, the situation role play. I'm a big believer of role playing, and I think that you need to sit by yourself sometimes and you just need to just close your eyes and think about all the stuff that can happen. This is a big time takeaway. Nobody really talks too much about this in any of the communications that I've seen or any of these other professional organizations or the professional documents and things that you can get on the web that talk about situational role play. Because the thing that you have to remember is in that God forbid situation, it could be an active shooter, it could be a bus crash, it could be a pool drowning, it could be a fallen tree, it could be a fire. For those of you that may have been an athlete, you don't have to be an athlete, Okay, maybe you're a musician, maybe you're an artist, whatever it is. Remember that moment when your adrenaline is pumping and think about, now I got to deal with all this stuff. And that's piece of communication. Again, it's a little bit different for all the different camp directors out there because under the banner of JCC, there might be somebody that is going to be getting in touch with your supervisor for you, or your executive, your board, your JCC membership. Okay? You as a camp director, who's going to be in touch with your campers? Who's then going to be in touch with your staff? Now you have all these camper parents that you've got to get to. Then you have the camper parents of the situation. So in the, God forbid, a tree fell and there was death, you got to be able to get to those camper parents. Who's then going to get to all the other campers' families? And here's a key takeaway. Don't forget your family. Because with all of this instant communication and social media, the word might get out there a little bit quicker than it is back in the day. And your family might hear about something that's happened at camp. So again, you need to figure out how you're going to communicate and when. And then you have that whole outside realm, the law enforcement, the media, which could be a game changer for you. And then again, depending on your own JCC, the partner Jewish organizations, UJ Federation, synagogues, day schools, because again, in the case you might have 3 or 4 partnerships with different day schools or synagogues where they're sending their kids to your camps, and in that God forbid situation, being able to tie into them. So now we're back into the be aware of, and that adrenaline's pumping, and now you have to deal with all this instant communication because your staff have cell phones, okay? They're going to pop things up on social media. You got a staff that challenges your authority. You have staff that are going to melt down. All of this stuff is happening, okay, and you have to manage it, or you and your team have to manage it. And then, mitten, grin, and everything else, it could be a crime scene. So now you have to make sure once the police come on there, what's going to happen. Now, when I role play, okay, you can look at all of this stuff and you can play this all in your head, okay, on a normal given day. But now I'm going to add a little bit of a different layer. Think about it happening on a parent visiting day and how all of that works. Think about your staff challenges. Some of you, have staff that are 16, 17, and 18. They deal with things one way. College students deal with it another way. Adults deal with it, hopefully, even a different way. But a lot going on, a lot to manage, a lot to think about. But again, this can be a little overwhelming, but if you take the time between now and the beginning of camp to think through some of this stuff, to role play some of this stuff, to have different levels of conversations with your supervisors or your committees or your board, you're going to feel a little bit more comfortable in what it is that you do. Let's talk about security guards for a moment. At the Henry Kaufman campgrounds, we have security guards at all the gates. Usually they're the same guards. They're not Mickey Mouse guards. These are mostly all retired NYPD officers. We have some that are still active, and they do this as a side job. We only use professionals. And this is also going to be a big change for the majority of camps, is all of our guards are armed. They all have concealed weapons. The majority of Jewish camps, not only in JCC world, but in Ramah and URJ, etc., the majority of camps do not. I can give you a dissertation why you should, but that's not my job today, but that's a conversation that I'm sure is ongoing within most agencies today. In that God forbid situation that there's an active shooter in a Jewish day camp or sleepaway camp, the conversation will change immediately. Similar to the way the conversation changed in JCC several years ago when there was the shooting at the Kansas City JCC. The other thing that, for those of you that have security guards, is they know, you should know that they know, okay, that they're going to get shot first. If the bad guy comes in, right, 9 out of 10 times, they're going to get shot first. That's always in the back of my mind, because part of what I do in my given day is I'm always schmoozing with the guards. Not that it takes them away from the job that they have to do, okay, but I want them to know how much I appreciate them, and I want them to understand the importance of their jobs, and I get it, okay? And when you think about all of this, hopefully, okay, you sleep a little better at night, okay, when depending on what part you're thinking about. But the other thing that, and I'm sorry, Aaron, I just got to sort of share one piece that, you know, in the God forbid situation, everybody's going to call 911. And by the time 911 gets to the camp, if it's a minute, 2 minutes, or 3 minutes, okay, the potentials of dozens of campers that could die is there. And that's one of the reasons why we have armed guards, because we know, okay, and again, they're very professional, they're trained, that, you know, we're going to save lives. And that's an important piece for us. As you can read, okay, on this slide, questions you should be asking. I'm not going to read over all of them. You get the general idea that the security guards in our world are very, very important. The other thing in our world, which is different from the majority of the people on the call, this is New York City. One of our camps is Staten Island, okay, one of the boroughs of New York, the others in Long Island, the others in Rockland County. We just have to deal with things a little bit differently, okay, fortunately or unfortunately, on a daily basis. So what do I think about? I drive around from our sites to sites, okay, and I think about a lot of different things. The last thing on my mind is kids having fun, okay, are kids learning anything? Are they having this wonderful Jewish experience? Other people can think about that. Don't get me wrong. It's always there, okay, but most of my day I'm thinking about safety and security. And I also deal a lot with, you know, the staff that work for the Henry Kaufman campgrounds, and some of the things that I tell my guys, and this is something that I think is very important for everybody. I talk about the mirror test. And the mirror test is very simple. If you can look in the mirror and you can tell yourself the truth, that you did the best you could, okay, you're going to be fine. I've dealt with a number of JCC executives or other professionals that have had a death in their facility or at their camp or wherever, and the one thing that's very clear, if they know that they've done everything that they could have possibly done, okay, to make sure that accident could have been prevented, they sleep a little bit easier at night. If you don't do everything that you know that you can do, then you have a little bit more of a problem. I also think about, in that God forbid situation, if I had to sit in front of the judge, I would tell the truth, but I'd also be able to say I did my best. Remember, if the shoe fits, some of this will be yes, some of this will be no, okay, some of this will work for you, okay. One of the challenges that you might be thinking about now, but you'll surely be thinking about by the end of this conversation, is how do I get my supervisor, okay, to understand some of these issues, or how do I get past my supervisor because it's going to be budget related? Well, and one of the things that I talk about in my 10 takeaways, I'm going to highlight that, but it's something that you need to think about in the conversations with your supervisor. The easy story I like to tell is when I was at Emma Kaufman Camp, we had these walkie-talkie radios that you get at Radio Shack, and they had those 9-foot metal antennas. They were great for sword fights. That was about it, because it always died. And then Motorola came out with a more high-tech type of walkie-talkie, and I remember going to my supervisor, and he basically said no. And so then I did something, I don't know, right or wrong, but it worked. I said, let me ask you a question. Your son comes to camp. We're going to be out 2 miles away. In that God forbid situation that something happens, okay, by the time somebody from wherever they're at gets back to camp, he said, go buy the walkie-talkies. Excuse me, I just need to take a drink of water. Thank you. What do I look for while I'm at camp? Well, when I used to, back in the day, I used to look for something shiny. Okay, it was always like, a piece of glass that shouldn't have been there, maybe a piece of metal that somebody could get hurt on. I used to look for bees nests, okay, bees hives, okay, so kids wouldn't get stung at camp. Now I look for things that are a little bit different. I look for things that are out of place. I look for a person that's out of place. I look for a package, okay, that's out of place. Several years ago, we had some Israeli scouts at camp, and there was, an executive standing with me, and she said to me, "Lenny, what are you looking at? Why aren't you watching the performance?" And, I said, "I got it. I'm listening." And, after a couple of minutes, she sort of figured out what I was looking at. We had about 1,000 kids in one space, okay, and I was just looking to make sure that our security, which was on the perimeter of the location, was doing what they needed to do. Part of it sort of lines into the optics, okay? The optics of security. What do your staff see? What do your parents see? What do your board of directors or camp committees see? What are your community partners, your insurance providers, the organizations within the community, or law enforcement? Part of providing that safe environment is letting people know that you're serious. As an example, we have vendors. We have probably close to 100 buses that come out every day, maybe a dozen different companies. What we started to do is we started to send a letter to the bus companies and all the different vendors that all of our different camps use to let them know about our security and why we do security and a little bit on how we do security and how it's important for those bus drivers that are coming on camp to be identifiable. And that as a Jewish organization, and like most of you, we don't have all Jewish children, okay, whatever the percentage is, and we share that. It's not, an all-Jewish operation. We let them know that, unfortunately, we might be a target. So we have to do everything we need to do to let people know that we provide a very safe and secure facility and that we're serious about what we do. We think about social media a little bit differently. In some cases, some of you might be thinking, well, we have a police car that sits in front of our gate. Well, have you ever taken a picture of that police car, okay, and posted it on your Facebook page, just as an example? Because if the bad guy's looking and the bad guy sees that police car, okay, picture, he or she might decide, I'm not going to bother with this. I'm going somewhere else. Little things make big things happen. I also carry a second phone in the summer. It's what I call my bat phone. As a matter of fact, my site directors and my 2 staff also carry a second phone. One phone we have with AT&T, one phone we have with a different company, just in case that the service goes down. Now, who would think that the service would go down, okay, for one of these major companies? Well, unfortunately, I think it was 2 years ago, AT&T went down, okay, last year, AT&T went down for a couple hours. So we were prepared in that God forbid situation. But sometimes when I'm in a meeting in the summer and I'll pull out, I'll put both phones on the desk or on the counter or wherever, and somebody will say, really, 2 phones? And I'll just very nonchalantly say, well, this is why I carry 2 phones, and they sort of look at me. And the reality is that if the second phone rings, I know something really bad has happened, or maybe there was a death at the camp. Last year, the second phone never rang. So that's our goal every year, obviously, for the second phone never to ring. The other thing that we do, and again, there's a picture of this in several slides down the way, is that we have ATVs on each of our site. And again, this is the optic. So when visitors come in or parents come in, we have these ATVs. We also have golf carts for our security personnel as well, but we have at least one ATV at each of our site, and that ATV, that officer's role is to drive through the site to randomly go wherever and make sure that we're safe. And we always make sure that when we have visitors at camp, that ATV is very, very present, and we let people know exactly what that officer's role is and why we do what we do. We used to only have golf carts. We're moving up to ATVs because we have very large facilities, and in that God forbid situation that on our site we had to sort of chase somebody, we'd be able to get there just a little bit quicker. Okay, emergency preparation. Again, assuming, I hate to assume, but I got to believe that everybody has some type of emergency procedures handbook. And in that emergency procedure handbook, you're talking about missing persons, you're talking about weather hazards, you're talking about bomb and threats and terrorism, sheltering in place, you have your emergency phone numbers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Little things make big things happen. It's important for all staff to know what their role is, especially your key staff. Please don't assume that they're going to read it. Actually sit and review whatever's in your handbook with everybody. Let them ask questions. Let them understand exactly what they need to be doing. One of the things that we're investing more time and energy this year is training, especially with our part-time summer staff, especially with our senior staff, some of our administrative staff. We all need to be on the same page, understanding what it is that we're doing, when and how. The other thing, again, assuming that everybody's pre-programmed your phone, installing and updating whatever apps that you have, okay, assuming that everybody's got more backup chargers that you know what to do with. Okay, again, all little things make big things happen. And understand that in the case of an emergency, it's your leadership. All eyes are going to be on you. A lot of common sense is 101. We also have, this is more for our internal key staff. We have, this is what we call Code Red. For those of you that follow politics, and you've ever heard about the president carrying his football, might be her football one day, but the football is basically the nuclear codes. And the God forbid situation, the president always has the football next to him wherever he is going. So we have our red book with us wherever we're going. It's not only in the office, it's not only in my car, it's also at home. Because in that God forbid situation, let's say on Tuesday, you had to call in, you were sick, you weren't feeling well, you had to stay at home for whatever the reasons, and something happened, and you say, oh my God, my Code Red book is not here. You're doomed. You're done. Okay? So you need to think. Little things make big things happen. Make sure your senior staff have this as well. Again, in this Code Red book, it has the contact list, the procedures, everything that you can read right there. But the thing that it has the most important, I don't know if we have it on the slide, I'm sorry, is scripts. We have scripts. This is for me now. In that case of a God forbid situation, and I think that I'm pretty good, but I know that when that adrenaline's pumping and there was a death or a fallen tree or whatever it is, that I'm going to open up my Code Red book and I'm going to be able to read from the script, okay, when we do our instant messaging so everybody can hear exactly. I don't have to fumble any words. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to take a minute out of my day to write something down. It's a script of what is, and what we're going to say and what we're going to communicate. Again, people know that I'm in charge. They have confidence, and this trickles down, okay, to kids, to campers, to staff, to whomever your audience is. Next on the hit parade, again, this might be a little bit different if the shoe fits for you, okay, but this is my preparation. Now remember, I'm driving most of the time from one site to the other, but these are the preparations that I have. I have my bat phone. I have a tremendous, in both phones, I have all the emergency numbers you can imagine. I got backups to the backups to the backups from my chargers. We also use something called push-to-talk. We have about 100 of those push-to-talk in our system, and it's instant communication between said people on different, on our different sites. You might want to go to AT&T and check that out, or whatever your carrier is. I'm sure they have something close to it. All of the different apps, okay, that you can imagine. There's so many new weather apps that are coming out right now as well, especially that, tell you almost to the minute when the thunderstorm is coming or the lightning, etc. So you might want to check that out. Because I drive, I also have some other things that are in my car. Okay, you can read through the list here. There's a couple beautiful pictures. Okay, there's some lights that have you just push the light and it can go on anywhere in case there's a power outage. This little it's a high-tech car battery charger. It's really cool. It can charge a truck if need be. If we have any flat tires. Again, all little things. It works for me. Okay, you might want to see what's in your car or what's in your backpack or what's in your office. Okay, but it's the little things, okay, that you might want to think about, especially at the bottom right. The most important thing in my backpack is I got to have a Snickers bar because I know I'm going to be stressed, and when I'm stressed, I got to have a piece of chocolate. So this might be a little bit different for you. We have a security board. You probably have a security. If you don't, you might have a security committee. You might have a security task force. And as we all know, sometimes when lay leaders are involved, it's easier to get things done because they're going to validate and they're going to be your champion in order to be able to get certain things accomplished or find the money and the resources necessary to buy and do what it is that you do. This is also important as it, again, filters out into the other community partners that we might have that, again, if it's the UJA, if it's the synagogue, if whomever, they know that we have lay people involved as well, and they're pretty well astute to security. They're not all security professionals, okay? Some of them, run different types of businesses or companies, okay? But again, it's part of the optics, okay, of, something that's very, very helpful and supportive to us, especially on the legal side. Procedures and protocols. Again, so much of this is what we call Common Sense 101. Just a small little piece of think about when you call 911. Are you letting other people know within your camp that you've called 911, that there's an ambulance going to be coming, that there's a fire truck going to be coming? Do you want sirens? Do you don't want sirens? Sometimes you can have a relationship with your local law enforcement or your fire department. Okay, you know what? When you get to camp, just turn your siren off. We know you're there. Your light's going to be on. Okay, but we don't want to hear the siren. So again, little pieces. Okay, a lot of this stuff you can find online. I'm sure that you have all the information that you need about bomb threats, okay, and about incident reports. This is a big piece for us. Again, we're a little bit different because we're the facility, okay, but we do a lot of pre-camp communication, letting our stakeholders know what it is that we're doing and why we're doing it and how we're doing it. As an example, we put a letter to the agencies and we talk about, here are all the things that we're doing for security, and we do not PDF this one particular letter because in the letter there's a line about, that we have armed security guards on site, professionally trained, et cetera, et cetera. Some of the camps choose not to do that, put that line in the letter. The majority, I'm happy to say, let their parents know that this is the situation and your campers are in a very safe and secure operation. Give me a second. In some of the communications that we also send out, we track who opens it and who doesn't open our emails. It's not to be big mother, big brother, father, whatever. It's to say, well, if we see that 5 camp directors haven't opened this very important email or very important information, I'll get to one of their supervisors or we'll get to the camp director and say, listen, you need to open up our information because we're sharing a lot of very important info as well. And since I'm sure so many of you do this in constant contact or whatever your methods are, that you might be able to do a little bit of tracking as well. Summer communications, some of this I've talked about, being able to reach all the different staff and the supervisory staff anytime an incident occurs, either through our emergency phones, our push-to-talk, our walkie-talkies. We just installed over the last 2 years wireless public address systems throughout the entire camps. Rather expensive, but critically important, we feel, to be able to move the masses from point A to point B. Again, little things make big things happen. Now, it's important, we believe, okay, to keep up with technology. Again, it's going back and sitting in front of that judge. Sometimes you can't say, we tried, okay? Sometimes this doesn't work. Sometimes you're going to have to spend a little bit of money, okay, in order to be able to accomplish your goal because it's the right thing to do. And the expectation of safety and security is a little bit different, as we know today, than it was back in the day. The other thing as it relates to summer communications is that we have a somewhat large population of special needs children at each of our different camps. So we learned sort of the hard way that maybe some of the language that we were using wasn't appropriate, and some of my staff have worked with some of the agency staff to come up with some more appropriate language when we use it on the PA system, and we work with those special needs campers, groups a little bit differently if we have to move them, okay, from point A to point B. Here's our budget. Again, we spend a lot of money. You can see the difference between 2012 and 2015. Remember, we're in New York. Remember, we're talking about upwards of 5,000 campers and staff a day. And it does get a bit expensive, but there's certain things that you can do within your camp that really don't cost all that much. It's low cost. Staff IDs. Everybody should be really thinking about, if you're not doing staff IDs, to do some type of staff IDs. Visitor VIP badges. If you have staff parking on camp, or do you have parking permits? You know, we just did this year for the first time, we have camp maps. But the camp maps just tell you where different camps are located or different buildings are located. So this year we broke it down into zones, because if the police department needed to come in, they don't really know where, you know, the name of Camp Kahila is. They just know they need to get up to zone 3, and they can see it on the map. Target hardening. I'll read this for a moment with you. Target hardening involves all measures that make committing a crime a bit more difficult. This can take various forms, ranging from alarm systems to security cameras to barricades, window guards. In general, target hardening is not about making objects completely resistant attack. It's about making it less attractive for potential criminals to reduce the impact of an attack. Part of what we've learned through our risk assessment, okay, is that if we can slow the bad guy down, okay, seconds save lives. Obstacles can be helpful. Here's a picture of our ATVs and our security guards in the ATVs. Again, a lot of optics, especially during those visual sweeps. We have, you can see in this picture, well, you really can't see, but there's a couple cameras. Maybe the next slide. We have cameras. We have these little booths at our different sites. Okay, this security officer, in front of him is about 100 feet, 100 yards, okay, of driveway. So he's sitting down. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He can see if anybody's driving up. You can see this is one of our barrier gates. Okay, we're always keeping our gates locked. Not only do we have the barrier gates at the entrances, but we have a number of barrier gates throughout the facility. And we keep them locked during most of the day, with the exception of a golf cart needing to get to the right or to the left, and they have room to get through. And the reason we keep these gates locked, and we've put a number of these gates to our facility, is if somebody gets to the front gate, which they could easily do, then again, it just slows them down a bit, okay, along the way. We have some license plate readers at each of our gates. We're going to be enhancing them a bit this year, but as you can see, every car that comes in, we're able to see the license plate from the front and from the back. We want to keep as alert as possible. I mentioned some resources. It's a tremendous amount of resources, okay, on the website. Aaron mentioned about some of the resources, okay, that are on JCCA, whatever it is, me, you, but I know that there's tremendous resources there as well. What I want to talk about for a little, for the next few minutes, and then I'm sure there's going to be some questions, is some of the takeaways. Number one, we talked about the role play scenarios: active shooter, bus crash, pool drowning, fallen tree branch, fire. Play it in your head over and over again. Staff training. Map out the roles for you and your staff. Be prepared. The barriers. Now, I showed you some barriers moments ago, but the other thing you might want to think about is open spaces. It's your visual, it's your sight line. So if you think about that you have this big field, okay, and in the middle of the field, okay, not in any kind of way of any of the actual athletic, games that could be played on the different fields, but you have a shed. And in the shed, that's where you keep all of your, your equipment. Does that shed really need to be there? Because now if you're standing wherever you're standing, you can't get an easy sight line from point A to point B because this shed is in the way. So you might want to think about open spaces and maybe moving some of the barriers that may or may not be around your facility. Personal preparation, okay, it was those long list of things that I have in my car, that I have in my office, that I have in my backpack, and it's not an exhaustive list. Okay, I'm sure that you can come up with some other things that might be helpful to you. The entrances and the entrances and the exits. Again, something that we think about is we have captive audiences of children. So at our pools, and again, we're always learning. Didn't think about this for the first 8 years I was here, but so we have a pool complex, okay, that, at any one of our sites, there could be about 1,000 to 1,200 kids at one time. Well, if, God forbid, the bad guy got there, okay, we only have 3 exits. Well, now we have 5 because we went to the fence company and said, we need you to cut a gate here and we need you to cut a gate here. And in the morning, we unlock those gates. They're not really for the campers or the staff to use, and the staff will know that, okay, but in that, God forbid, situation that we have to get everybody out, that's just one example. And most of your pools have fences, and most of your pools probably only have 1 or 2, gates. So something you might want to think about. You might want to think about your buildings. Do all your buildings, obviously they have a front door, but do they have a back door? Do they have a side door? Is it something, it's a cost, is it something that you need to consider? Moving ahead. Expense versus cost. This is the expense of doing something at the cost of not doing something. Meaning, if you don't do something that's very easy, very basic, could you be sued? Is it your reputation? Is it the reputation of your camp? What's the fallout going to be? Just little things to think about. Number 7, the use of technology that's out there. It's again, little things make big things happen. It's the weather apps. God forbid there's a storm that's coming, okay, and, lightning strikes. You didn't know about it. You didn't warn anybody about it. And when you have to stand in front of that judge or your supervisor, and they're going to ask you a question, well, did you have an app? Did you have a radio that had the weather channel on? Whatever it is, okay, you want to be prepared. And with technology the way it is, there is so much incredible information. There are so many incredible apps that are out there. Just a little bit of research and you'll be fine. Contractors on your speed dial. This is a big one. Most of you, a lot of you had security directors, so some of you don't think you need to think about security the way that I might have mentioned. Well, now let's talk about contractors. So your site manager, your facility supervisor, the gentleman or the woman that's in charge of maintenance and housekeeping at your JCC on your site, they're off sick. Well, what happens if there's a tree that falls down? What happens if the power goes out? What happens if the plumbing, whatever. So just in case, make sure you have their contact information in your speed dial. Not that you're going to be the person that's going to need to contact them, but just in that God forbid situation, little things make big things happen. The written procedures and protocols. Again, in some of the questions that I asked, okay, some of the answers that I got back were a little bit frightening, okay, as it relates to being prepared, not being prepared, feeling you're prepared, understanding your security plans, okay. This was amazing. Do you feel confident with your current security plan? 18 people said yes, that's great. 18 people said no. And I'm like, oy vey, that's a red flag for me. So review them, rewrite them, talk to your supervisor, talk to whomever, make sure you're comfortable with whatever your procedures or protocols are. Number 10, again, Common Sense 101. If you're not talking to your local police and the fire department or the emergency medical teams, okay, that's just another missed opportunity. Bring them in. A number of camps offer their facilities for picnics, for barbecues. It's a way to be able to, again, just be able to welcome your neighbors in there. The last thing I want to mention, which I don't believe is on any slide, it goes from the one of the questions that I asked, and the question was, how do you get around camp? 12 people by golf cart, 1 person on a bike, no people on an ATV, and 34 people walk. Just want to, for those 34 people, and I know there's more than, I think there's close to 100 people on this call, for those of you that are walking, it's great, okay? However, you might want to think about the usage of your time. You might want to think about the time consideration for you to get from point A to point B. And again, as it relates to security. So in the normal day, walking around, schmoozing with campers and counselors and your specialists, but do you even have a golf cart on site, okay, that you're able to use, okay, in case of not only the security, but there's also medical situations as well. And I can tell you that it gets to be a long summer, and the wear and tear on your body after 8 weeks of schlepping miles and miles and miles, unless you're in great shape, you may get a little bit tired by the end of the summer, so it's just something that you can consider. So ladies and gentlemen, friends, that's it for me. Okay, I think that there might be, I hope there might be a question. So Dina, Aaron, I leave it to you. Thank you all very much, and let's have a great and safe and enjoyable summer.
Okay, Lenny, thank you so much for presenting. I think we have some questions coming through. Does Rebecca want to take those too? You want us to do that?
Hold on, if you want to, Rebecca, can you put it on my screen?
I don't see a question. I'm sorry, what, Rebecca?
We don't see the questions on the screen.
Okay, so the question says, it's from Allison Kaufman, and she says, we've always been told not to share our security plans online or via email. Doesn't this mass email communicating these plans go against this advice?
So the way the JCCA does it, we actually have the security plans either going to me or to someone in our office, and she posts it onto the website under the secure location that if your exec wants to give you access to, they can do that. If not, your exec has access to that. So I agree that you do not want to publish your security plan and send it out. We would never send it out via our listserv. So the best way to do that is to do that through jcca.me, do that secure piece of it. You can email it to me. If you're not comfortable with that, then we can come up with another plan on how we would do that.
I believe he was talking about he emails it out to his people, to his campground, the campers, parents and stuff.
The difference is with the parents or the vendors, we share that there is a plan. We don't give all the details of the plan. So it's about the general of that there's a plan in place, that we are on this, again, connecting with the office versus the actual sharing of the plan.
The only people who should know about your security plan are the people who need to implement it, and parents should know that there is a plan in place that has been created in cooperation with law enforcement, but they don't have to know the details, and frankly should know the details because you don't want that to be all over the place. Other questions?
I don't think so.
Okay, it doesn't look like we have any more questions. So again, thank you all for participating on this webinar. If you have any questions, Lenny's information is there. And my information, you can always reach me at JCCA, which is aaron@jcca.org. So we look forward to a great summer. And again, if there are questions, let me know. I see there's a question. Can we, yeah, so this presentation is actually going to be available. It's been taped and it's going to be on jcca.me as well. I have to check if we're able to send it out to participants, but the whole thing was also recorded, so we'll take care of that. And with that said, we thank everybody for participating and wish you all a great summer and a happy Passover. Thank you.